GM. GM Fiat Jeff. Can I get a GM Fiat Jeff?
GM Fiat Jeff.
All right. Oh, nice. Okay. Time to get started here. So, the biggest complaints that I continue to hear people say about Nostr is that when they join Nostr, all they see is people talking about Bitcoin. Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin. I love Bitcoin. GM, hodl, bullish. Now, Bitcoin is revolutionary, and I believe it is key to Nostr's success. But social media needs communities. Black Twitter, Stan Twitter, journos, Book Talk, Fit Talk, Swift Talk. Mainstream social media is already benefiting from these communities. There's no reason Nostr couldn't also have communities, especially considering that they can monetize with Bitcoin. But we are not marketing to these communities. We are simply saying, Nostr, 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 and hoping that they find us. Kind of like an ostrich with its head buried in the sand. I'm sorry, I just wanted to say that. People have often asked me what I think success looks like. And my answer has always been the same. When your grandma is using it. In 2019, my wife and I launched a website called Spinster on the Fediverse. For those who don't know, the Fediverse is the larger network of Mastodon. And at the time, people on Twitter were getting banned for having the wrong opinions about gender identity. So, we did a little marketing campaign on Twitter where we said, we don't ban feminists. And in our first week, we had 5,000 people knocking our door down. The site would freeze and crash as people fought to get in. And once the users finally did get in, they immediately waged a war against each other over whose true land this was. Once I figured out how to load balance Mastodon, things calmed down, and Spinster grew into the largest feminist website on the decentralized web, today with over 20,000 users. Overwhelmingly, women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. Grandmas. And once I realized this model was successful, it pushed me to make it reproducible for everyone. So I created Soapbox. I turned Spinster's pink into blue by default, but I made it configurable so the admin could choose any color scheme. They can upload a custom name and logo and launch Soapbox on any domain name. Soapbox went on to be used by Christians, Italians, furries, Muslims, feminists, shitposters, and many more. The goal has always been to attract every niche until we have everyone. Most notably, Soapbox is being used by Truth Social on the web, where I served as their head of engineering for 2 years before jumping ship to Nostr. Something I wish more people knew is that Donald Trump's social media platform is a fork of a feminist website. Now, I've been building social media for my entire life. When I was 13, I created this website called Gleason. It was used by my friends at school, and for a while it was our primary form of communication. During that period of my life, my entire friend group was defined by this website. One friend even wrote a song about this, where he described it as the place where some people met most of their friends. Then Facebook came along and decimated this website. But the way I saw it, they had only won the battle, and they had not won the war, a war that I am continuing to fight today. Later in 2016, Mastodon came around, and it restored my hope in independent websites being viable again, leading me to create Spinster, Soapbox, to work at Truth Social, and ultimately to build on Nostr. Today, Gleason has been revived as a testing ground for my new software, and it's the main way that I use Nostr. So, for the past year, I've been working on bringing that experience to Nostr. Last year, I presented the Nostr Bridge at Nostr Asia, a bridge that connects the Fediverse and Nostr together. Today, I'm introducing a full-fledged Mastodon alternative built entirely on Nostr. Ditto! So, what is Ditto? Ditto is a Nostr community server that aims to expand the network. With traditional Nostr apps, people discover Nostr by searching for the keyword Nostr. That means they already have an interest in Nostr in the first place. And once they're in, they might find a community if they get that far. With Ditto, people find websites they want to join because of a community. And then they discover Nostr as a side effect, which gives them the opportunity to learn what it is and why it matters. The idea is to launch thousands of Nostr websites on different domains, each marketed towards a specific community. There are over 9,000 Mastodon servers already doing this. But Nostr could do it better, because unlike Mastodon, users on Nostr are not locked in to a single server. They can move freely between clients. But even though joining a Ditto server is joining a community, you are not isolated. You are still part of the bigger Nostr network, just like a regular client. This model emphasizes independent websites and domain names. Every Ditto server starts with a domain name. Users can request a NIP05 on that domain, which admins can approve or deny. Then there is a dedicated feed of people on that domain name. When you're on gleasoner.dev, you'll see the gleasoner.dev feed. When you're on ditto.pub, you'll see the ditto.pub feed. You still have a regular home feed, too, of people that you follow across the network, but the local feed is emphasized in the UI and on the homepage. For example, you can see the feed of any NIP05 name from Ditto. Here's nostrplebs.com. On Ditto, Nostr Plebs becomes a community with its own user base and feed. Here's getalby.com's feed. I think it's interesting to see the different ways that people have been onboarded onto Nostr. And if you look closely, you'll notice that there's actually a tiny little Alby icon in the corner of each of these posts by their usernames. That's the favicon pulled from Alby, and when you click on it, it takes you to the Alby feed. There's a Zeus one down there too. Okay, here's the feed of primal.net. On Ditto, you can see not just feeds of any other Ditto server, but a feed of any NIP05 name. So this makes it easy for people to implement and makes it backwards compatible with the existing network. Okay, let's talk about how Ditto can strengthen a community. One way is by improving discovery. So the Ditto admin can curate people to follow by marking them as suggested users. Then they will show up in sidebars across the site, allowing people to discover content related to the community. This way you can curate people who you think are good representatives of your community, and then when people join, then they can find those people. For example, these are some of the suggested users of Henhouse. Ditto also has a trending algorithm that scrapes the database a couple times per hour and then generates a NIP32 label event. And that's how it's able to create those graphs of the trends over time, because it's just querying the labels over time. And since it saves them to just like normal Nostr events, I think this is pretty cool because other clients like Coracle can take advantage of this to create custom feeds. Moderation. Each Ditto server has a team of admins and moderators. They can approve and revoke usernames, ban users, and delete posts. And it's one of the most robust moderation experiences on Nostr today. So when you join a Ditto server, you're opting into that particular team of moderators, essentially curating the community for you. And this is a thing that many people actually want. But the beautiful thing is, if you don't like how a server is run, you can just move to a different Ditto server or move to another Nostr client entirely, because it's essentially just still Nostr. So I believe that this is something that's going to help Nostr spread without limiting user freedom. And since Ditto needs to support thousands of users, I put a lot of effort into performance. This Prometheus Grafana graph here, which is kind of still loading, just shows a ton of data about the Ditto server, including HTTP requests, database connections, and then kind of down at the bottom, it has a full breakdown of relay events by kinds. And so you're able to see, it's kind of interesting, likes come in a sawtooth wave. Kind 1 is the most common thing that you'll see. But this has just been extremely helpful for figuring out where problems are. And frankly, I don't know how relay operators are able to build without something like this today. I think that everyone needs something like this. So if you're running a Ditto server, you're going to be able to set up one of these as well so you can get some real insight into what's going on. Finally, Ditto integrates with Bitcoin to support Lightning Zaps. And I think in this community model, Zaps are even more awesome than they could be. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. Okay, so who would make a Ditto server? I think in this model, there are 3 main personas. There's leaders, followers, and independents. And as far as independents go, I think that the existing Nostr ecosystem kind of has y'all covered. Like with apps like Damus and Amethyst, people don't need to run their own server, but the relationship between leaders and followers is where I think Ditto really shines, because Ditto allows leaders to create servers and then draw in huge amounts of people who then empower the entire ecosystem. So I have a few ideas of Ditto servers I'd like to see. I'd like to see one for gamers. If any of y'all have seen the Super Smash Bros. Community, you know what I'm talking about. Another one I'd like to see is a political server, especially for a third-party candidate. And again, Yang Gang, if y'all remember them, then you know what I'm talking about. But I have so many ideas. It's literally endless, but I cannot build them all. So this is where you come in. If you have a community or even just an interest and you want to be a leader on the Nostr network, start a Ditto server. To do that, head over to docs.soapbox.pub/Ditto and follow the install guide to set up Ditto on a VPS. Or if you want help setting up a Ditto server, apply to our creator program at soapbox.pub/creators. More on that later. Okay, now seems like a good time to go over kind of the technical side of what all is happening here. So Ditto is a TypeScript server running in Dino. It has a Postgres database, and it implements Mastodon's REST API. Ditto is both a NIP01 client and relay all in one package, and that's why I refer to it as a Nostr server. And so each Ditto server exposes a /relay endpoint that is a full Nostr relay that other clients can connect to and do the regular relay stuff. And this is actually kind of a unique design, oddly, in Nostr, and it's because of the difficulty with signing, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. So a lot of the problems that I solved on the Nostr side, I also extracted all of this code out and created this super thorough Nostr library with tons and tons of documentation. So if you're interested in doing things the Ditto way, then feel free to check out Nostrify. I gave a little speech on it yesterday. You can find the video if you missed it. Okay, so signing events. Ditto is actually kind of like a traditional Web 2 server, like a Ruby on Rails type of thing. And the reason people don't normally build something like that is because users want to be able to access their keys. So the naive thing to do if you're going to build something like this is to just custody the keys. But what I really didn't want to do was to reproduce all the things that I dislike about Mastodon. I want this to be something that is like all of the things that are good about Mastodon with none of the downsides. So I decided to implement NIP46 all throughout the code base. And even in the scenario where you're like pasting your NSEC in there, which that is a major part of the UI, that is using NIP46 behind the scenes to do it. So, and if you're using Soapbox with Ditto, Soapbox also has been updated to be a full NIP46 signer so that it's completely seamless. If you're going through the browser extension or you're just pasting the NSEC in, then the user doesn't even realize NIP46 is happening. NIP46 signing also opens the door to compatibility with Mastodon apps in a secure way. So this is one of the really interesting things about Ditto. as I was building it, the goal is to make Soapbox work with Nostr, essentially, all of the stuff that I've built over the years. And as a side effect of doing that, well, I have to implement Mastodon API. Now, all of the Mastodon apps happen to just work. So that's something that's pretty cool. Mastodon Android works, Mastodon iOS works, Sengi works. You can actually just install a Mastodon app and then type in ditto.pub or the URL of any Ditto server, and then you'll see this screen that pops up and it asks for a bunker URI. So you can just use any NSEC bunker or whatever, get your bunker URI, authorize it, and then you can use Mastodon Android. So now it's time for a quiz. I'm going to name an app, and then by show of hands, I want you to tell me whether it's a Mastodon app or a Nostr app. So the first one is Rabbit. If you think that Rabbit is a Mastodon app, raise your hand. All right, hands down. If you think that Rabbit is a Nostr app, raise your hand. Seems like about 50-50. Rabbit is a Nostr app. All right, next up. Rodent. If you think Rodent is a Mastodon app, raise your hands. Like 30% of you, maybe. If you think Rodent is a Nostr app, raise your hands. Okay, more people definitely think it's a Mastodon app. And you are correct. Rodent is a Mastodon app. Last one. Litterbox. If you think Litterbox is a Mastodon app, raise your hands. If you think that Litterbox is a Nostr app, raise your hands. All right. I think y'all are right again. Litterbox is a Mastodon app. But the beautiful thing is, if you're using Ditto, you can use any of these apps. So it doesn't really matter. In fact, you can use any of these hundreds of Mastodon apps that already exist. And it feels like by building this one piece of software, I've actually created hundreds of new clients. Because these are all new experiences and new gateways for Nostr users that people did not have access to before. For example, here is Mastodon Android on Ditto, and I think it works pretty well. Is it better than Amethyst? Probably not, but I think it's really cool that it works. And it could open doors to, people on the Fediverse who just want to continue using the app that they're used to, being able to do it on Nostr. So that's Ditto. Now it's time to talk about some stuff that's next. One of the things we're really excited about is we are building out Zap splits right now. And one of the major issues that we've run into on the Fediverse is kind of just sustainability of servers. Because what we'll see is because of this Fediverse model where you're locked into a server, and then there's people who are paying for these servers, they kind of just decide at some point, this is not it for me anymore, and then they shut their server down, and then we'll just see thousands of people kind of go away forever. And this problem is completely solved on Nostr due to portable identities. So one thing that we can do to kind of improve the experience for admins and for server runners, and also by extension people who are running relays, because each of these Ditto servers is a complete relay, is to enable Zap splits throughout the UI of this Ditto server. And that's going to allow people to have sustainability for their server. Another thing that we've done this year is we've launched a creator program, kind of similar to what NOS is doing. We see you. And if anyone is interested in starting a Ditto server and you don't have the means to, please head over to soapbox.pub/creators and apply with the form there, and we'll see if we can get you started. In addition to the creator program, this year I've also started a mentorship program to give up-and-coming developers an opportunity to work on Bitcoin and Nostr. So I want to give a special thanks to my wife, MK, to my team members, Shantaram, Patrick, and Daniel. I want to say thank you to Daniel for his work on design, and to Shantaram for hacking on our database. And as for Patrick, I first met Patrick on Telegram, and I learned that he taught himself in high school how to speak English by watching American movies. And he taught himself how to code because he wanted to become a professional programmer. But when I met Patrick, he was working at a Brazilian shoe factory because he had not yet had the opportunity to use those skills. Now, by show of hands, how many of you in this room are wearing shoes? All right, most of you. Now, by show of hands, how many of you would like to stop development of Nostr? None of you. Seems like a good lateral move, Patrick. So anyway, then I told Patrick to quit his job at the Brazilian shoe factory and to come join my team building on Bitcoin and Nostr. And then you know what happened? He did it. And then he integrated Lightning's apps into Ditto, fixed bugs, added features, and became an integral part of the team. And then it took him 5 days to get from his small town in Brazil to Riga, Latvia, where we are joined by him today. Stand up, Patrick! Let's give him a round of applause, everybody! There is nothing I admire more than bravery. That's it from me. Thank you very much.
All right. We got about 5 minutes. Alex, you want to maybe take a few questions? Anybody in the audience have anything for Alex? Right here in the front.
When is Truth Social moving to Nostr?
Oh, man.
When is Truth Social moving to Nostr?
That's a great question. So I went to like a dinner with them one time, and I told my coworkers, so every time I say Federation, y'all drink, okay? And I would just be like, so, Federation, Federation, Federation. And they would say, oh, well, we're already decentralized. We have people all over the world. And I don't think it's a winning argument. I don't think that they're as interested as they should be. But I would love to see it myself.
Anybody else?
Anyone brave enough?
All right. Thank you very much, Alex.